Let me tell you, I've been in enough of these. Ed, if you're back with me now, this is real deal wind that we're feeling now. What are you getting down where you are, pal? Can you hear me?
Hey, Chris, I can hear you. We're here in essentially downtown Naples, about a half mile away from the Gulf Coast. And then if you look back in this way, this is looking back toward into town. We're watching this center over here with the white tarp, and that rooftop there has been buckling up and down rather severely here for the last couple of minutes. So we'll continue to monitor things like that. The wind is just ferociously blowing from the east to the west back toward the Gulf, and that's clearly an indication, we are on the north side of this storm as this thing swirls around us and the eye continues to creep closer to us. After the eyewall gets here, the winds are going to shift. It's going to be from the west to the east. I was out on the beach just a little while ago monitoring the situation there, and it was amazing. The surf had been pushed back by these winds a good 100 yards from where we saw it yesterday. Essentially all of that moisture getting pushed back out into the Gulf waters. And as we stand out here, we are obviously keeping close tabs on what's coming from our eastern side over here. Chris, here the danger is that things are flying around so quickly that these large palm tree branches that we have seen flying off trees relentlessly throughout the day continue to do so. You can see them all over here littered on the ground, and then you can see water pooling up here on the ground. This is a minor little pool of water, but this gives you a good indication what's happening more severely and more seriously in other parts of the neighborhood where all of that, this is the storm surge, all this water getting pushed up. And the real concern is back over here to our east. And is the river that comes pushing in from south to north on the edge of Naples, Florida, where we are. And it is that water and into that marina, the water with these winds going to get pushed up to the north, and that's what's going to cause that storm surge in a lot of parts here of the Naples area and in Fort Myers, all the way up into Tampa as well. So that is the concern here throughout the day. And obviously these winds are going to be a major concern as well. Structurally, everything seems to be holding rather well from what we've been able to tell. It's things like this, as I mentioned here off the top, Chris, this tarp on top of this, what I believe is a recreation center. I have to double check that. But that you can see that kind of buckling back and forth, probably designed to do that to a certain extent. But as we get closer to the wall of this eye of this hurricane, it is structures like that could come ripping apart here as these winds become the most fierce. Chris?
All right, Eddie, do me a favor. Let's pace ourselves, get back inside, keep yourself and the photographer safe for a little bit. We'll start checking it with some other areas. But before we do, Chad, if you're still hearing us, Chad Myers, what can you give us as a reading in terms of the gusting? Look, we're all worried about the water. The storm surge is going to be the tail of the tape here. That's what kills us in hurricanes. You tell us all the time the lethality is from drowning. The wind just gets the headlines. Mm-hmm. But just to measure where we are in terms of the part of the process, what are we getting right now that Ed and I are feeling?
I think what you had was just clocked at 81 miles per hour. And the yellow on the map here, I know you can't see it, Chris, but there's a yellow area on the map. That area just went over Marco Island right there with 130 mile per hour gusts. So the winds are going to get 50 miles worse miles per hour than what you just saw as this eyewall gets to you. And if you're on the south side of Naples, you're already feeling it. If you're on the north side of Naples, you aren't in the eyewall yet. And Chris, you're not seeing it yet. You're going to be, honestly, in 5 minutes, the pictures coming from your camera, if we can keep you on the air, are going to be amazing. But I want you and the photographer and the producer to please stay safe because this is about to get real.
Well, okay, absolutely. We do the job on a regular basis, so it's not the first time, and that's important because often when it is the first time, you're a little bit overly ambitious. But you're making me feel my age, Chad, because what I'm getting hit with right now feels a lot more than 80. Maybe it is just because, again, of the dynamic of the building. So let's check in on another area here, because again, as Chad's been educating us throughout this hurricane coverage, these areas that we're going to start going to, now we're going to go to Punta Gorda, they are especially vulnerable to the components of a storm like this kind of breadth, this kind of duration of impact for these areas that can't take much, they're particularly vulnerable. So, Miguel Marquez, Punta Gorda, what are you dealing with there now?
Well, we're dealing with what Chad has been talking about a lot today, and about how this storm, you really get a respect for the power of Mother Nature with this storm. I'm standing on the marina, on the muddy bottom of the marina here. You can see the mussels all the way down to the bottom. This wouldn't be possible except that the water is being pushed all the way out of the bay here, out to sea, as this storm is coming around from the top of us, pushing everything out. When that eyewall passes and it changes direction, everything that must go out must come back in. So they're expecting a 5 to 8 foot storm surge in this area. They're talking about 3 feet of standing water, 3 feet of water on land with a 5 to 8 foot storm surge. Basically a giant wave that would sweep in here. Very low lying areas. Look at this down here. This dock should normally be floating here, but that boat, it's sitting in mud. All the boats in here are pretty much sitting in mud. They would not be able to get out. The weather, we're a little protected by this jetty here, but the weather here has definitely taken a turn. We're probably at 50 miles sustained winds, and probably gusting up to close to 60. It's going to get worse though. This is about halfway. They're expecting Category 3-ish winds in this area, 110 sustained gusts up to 135. I want to show you this. That debris you see out there in the bay, that's the old bridge. They knocked it down years ago. People in this area haven't seen that in years and years and years. They have 2 new bridges across 41. It's likely that emergency services in this area have stopped now because winds are up over 40 miles per hour sustained. And authorities are saying at this point, shelter and stay in place. Don't try to get anywhere else. Stay where you are. But that storm surge now, the wind is coming, and that's going to do damage. But that storm surge is what they're really worried about. 60% of Charlotte County is in evacuation zones susceptible to flooding. Chris?
All right, Miguel, please keep me honest on what's going on with you. Let me know when to come back to you when the situation changes. We were just dealing with one little piece of hurricane hypocrisy there. I was trying to shoo somebody back inside. They poked out to sea because we're starting to get more violent gusts. And we get the inconsistency of the message. You know, we're saying, hey, don't come out here, it's dangerous, and they see us out here. But again, we are here in part to satisfy that kind of curiosity, to inform of what the situation is on the ground, to let people know and first responders know what's going on with the situations in their area. But you don't want to be out here if you don't have to be. All right, let's get to Ed Lavandera. I understand you found a way, Ed, to show people what's going on without exposing yourself to too much of it, because this is definitely picked up. So what do you have, my friend?
Hey, look, just so people understand what we're doing, we are inside, or kind of tucked away underneath a building that is protected on 3 sides, so it shields, especially our photographer, from the worst of these winds, and we're able to kind of jump in and out of the scene here as safely as we can. So that's kind of the way we operate, so that people understand if they do have that curiosity. But we are watching the winds as the camera angle that you're looking at from where our viewpoint here is looking toward the south, toward the eye of Hurricane Irma, and that is crossing the Marco Island area, which is about 20 miles south of where we are, and you can see the intensity of the winds here, by far the strongest we have experienced all day. I anticipate that this will only continue to worsen here over the next couple of hours. And that wind you see pushing from the left side of your screen.
I have to change the connection to do that.
All right, we lost Ed's shot. We'll make sure that he's okay. Oh, he's back now. Keep going, Ed, if you can.
We're back, Chris. We're still here. As I was saying, the winds you're seeing are moving from the east to the west across your screen there. We are on what appears to be, and this might have changed here in the last couple of minutes. Chad Myers can clarify a little bit better, but it sounds.
I lost IFB. All right, so Ed lost communications. Not unusual in this kind of situation, especially when it starts to pick up. We'll get him back. What we're dealing with here, though, in Naples, is exactly what they were worried about. this sustained battering of wind and rain. And then there's another huge component, which is going to be the storm surge. I don't know if you could hear Ed Lavandera and Chad Myers earlier talking to us about it, but they were saying that where the water should be, it's now gone. That's part of the energy exchange system of this hurricane, this counterclockwise force. It dumps it on one side, it pulls it out of the other. Chad Myers, if I can bring you in here, we haven't had that water come back yet, at least not in the main, and when it does, it's going to be bringing friends in the form of a surge. That's what we're worried about. How will this combine with that flow of water? What will the net effect of that be on this population?
Well, just issued was a flash flood emergency. Now that is above flash flood warning, and that is because the water will come crashing back on shore and is about to do so here at Marco. If you are, let's say, here, your winds are now beginning to push this direction, and this entire area from Everglades City all the way back down into the Everglades, flooding, flash flooding, 10 to 15 feet. If you're still here in Naples, the wind blowing offshore and not bringing your water in yet. But Marco, the eye just went by you. And as soon as that eye gets to the other side, all of a sudden the wind are going to shift and the wind are going to move that water back in. So from where we are now, Chris, in your harbor, somewhere 4 feet below where we should be, we're going to push all this water back in and possibly be 15 feet above where we should be. It's the bubble of water that happens below a hurricane because the air is being sucked in. It's a low pressure. There is a bubble of water, and yet there's also the forward motion. Well, now the forward motion of that bubble has stopped. It has stopped because land is now in the way. For a while, Key West was in the way, and so was Cudjoe Key, but those were just islands, and the water just ripped right on by. The water kept going, and now it's smashing on shore from Marco back over to Everglades City and eventually to Naples. Now, if we can get Chris's shot back, I can see Chris now. The wind is still picking up for you. You have at least another 30 miles per hour to go, Chris. So all we're trying to do with your shot is stay on the air, because we want you to be safe, but we also want the people just north of you to know what they have in store, because it's coming.
No, that is definitely the point, and I appreciate the concern, and my PJ is a good man, but Dave, I need you to pop off the sticks for a second and come up here, just so we can give them a sense, because you're right. If you are in Naples or in parts north, you have to understand here's what's coming your way, because these cities are very similarly constructed. Stand to your right, Dave. All right? This is where it's happening. These trees, these structures here have been taking it for hours, and we are seeing them start to give way. There were more of them not so long ago, and a lot of them, as you can see, they're going to be particularly vulnerable. And the concern is, where do they go? When these trees start to come, with these gusts that are increasing, where do they go? What windows do they hit? What structures do they hit? What does it do to power? What do they rip up with them from under the ground? And then what does the soaking storm surge do to those situations? All right, get back inside, Dave. What happens? Help Dave get inside. What happens once these trees have ripped up? You good? You good? Once these trees have ripped up with their root system, a lot of the power here that is underground and the water rushes into it, that's when you get a power outage. Now we're nearing about 2 million customers here without power. Now it's flooded. And that goes from hours or days to weeks for recovery. Now, I believe Ed Lavandera is back up. Ed, if that's true, pipe up and let me know what you're seeing from where you are. All right.
I think we got cut off a little bit last time, but we fixed up our microphone situation here a little bit better. But as we were saying, Chris, earlier, the winds you're seeing on the north side of this storm pushing from the east toward the west, and that is what you're seeing right now. And as the eyewall of this storm gets closer, the winds will only intensify them. If the eye does come right over where we are, we'll obviously have that lull here in the system for some time. But that does not mean by any means that the threat is over. Then the winds shift. We'll be on the backside of the storm. The winds will come from the west to the east, and that is the concern of the storm surge. Officials here have been saying over the last couple of days that storm surge could reach anywhere 10 to 15 feet. We've already seen water several blocks away from where we are starting to rise in some residential neighborhoods. The question is, where exactly is all that water going to go, and how high will it go? But once the storm passes through, and it is the Gulf waters that are starting to get pushed in here inland, that will be of major concern and something we'll have to continue to monitor. Everyone here that I've spoken with in Naples over the last 24 hours measures hurricanes by what happened here in 2005, Hurricane Irma. Talking to the mayor yesterday, he said, I asked him if that's a fair comparison, if that's really any way to kind of prepare for this. He acknowledged, look, that's the only barometer we have at this point, Hurricane Irma, and that was an incredibly strong storm here in this part of southwest Florida. But whether or not it will be any true indication of what this storm and hurricane is bringing remains to be seen. But that's their measuring stick at this point. I have a feeling that Hurricane Irma is going to be a completely separate measuring stick for this community as they see what kind of damage this storm surge here brings to this community. You can see and feel the intensity of these winds. Of course, we pan back over here to the left. You look back over here at this one particular structure. All the structures around us that I see continue to hold up rather well. It's this tarp on top of this rec center area over here that is still a major concern. You know, when you're looking into the rain, it's very disconcerting. You don't know. I'm going to step out here a little bit, so we'll leave up that shot so I can speak a little bit more clearly. But it is that tarp there as it buckles up and down, and wondering just how much longer it is going to last, and whether or not it's just going to rip apart from that structure and just get shredded here in those winds. So we'll continue to monitor that, Chris, as these winds and the eye of Hurricane Irma gets much closer here to Naples, Florida, in the southwest corner of the state.
Well, this is what they were worried about, is that a place like Naples that's already very tight to sea level was going to get hit for a long time by Hurricane Irma, and unfortunately that's what seems to be happening. Dave, if you can pan over to the left, this is the direction that Ed is. You can see the water coming in sheets sideways. You know, obviously the wind is going the way that the trees are going, but there are sheets of water going that way, and each one is like another punch, you know, another tenderizing blow. And this is a fight of many different rounds, and they've been taking it for round after round here. And remember, what the knockout is from Chad Meyer's perspective is this storm surge, and we still haven't seen it yet, but there is flooding around Ed Lavendera. Do you think that that's just groundwater and rain that you're seeing there, Ed, or do you think it's some kind of sign of water coming from the Gulf side?
No, I don't think water is coming from the Gulf side yet. I think a lot of this is rainwater that is pulling up on some of the lower lying areas of the streets. Obviously, that was based on what we saw this morning. You know, the last time we were able to venture out into some of the neighborhoods was about 2 to 3 hours ago, and then it just became too treacherous and dangerous for us to get out there, so we had to pull back. But I think for now, what we've seen is rainwater pooling up in various locations, but that just adds to the problems because the storm surge will come in over the top of that. And we haven't been able to make it over to the riverside here of Naples, where there is an extensive marina system. A lot of people who live on the canals and have their boats there. It is that river that the storm surge will push up through and then push into the more inland areas of Naples, creating that storm surge and that flooding there. So that's of concern. But once the eye passes through, that's the point where we start worrying about the Gulf water surge coming in to the area, and that'll be fascinating to see just how much this city can withstand that surge coming in from the Gulf of Mexico, and we'll see what condition those streets are. Everyone that was on the western edge of Collier County and in Naples was told to evacuate. By far, everything that I'd seen, I hadn't seen but maybe a handful of people on the western edge of this city over the last 24 hours. And according to various officials that we've spoken to, they feel like the vast majority of people evacuated those homes, either went to shelters here in Naples or started taking off and left town several days ago to get away from this storm. So that is the good news. It sounds like human life in the path of this storm, for the most part, has evacuated. Of course, that is not to say that everyone evacuated. First responders know that there's always going to be a segment of the population stubborn to leave and willing to ride it out in these conditions, so that they're prepared for that. And in speaking with the police chief on Marco Island, which is about 20 miles south of where we are, and that is a barrier island with about 16,000 people call that full-time as their home. The police chief told me last night, as the storm was starting to approach, that he believed that most of the people had evacuated the area, but they are on the island. 80 first responders, police and firefighters on the island, dispatched in various locations, high-level locations around the island to prepare for this. Those people are in the middle of this storm, perhaps even in the eye of the storm as we speak, probably trying to gauge the situation. But they had deployed boats, watercraft into various areas, prepared to launch any kind of high-water rescues if need be, or if anybody was trapped and wanted to escape after that. But they're obviously waiting for the worst of this storm to go by. Chris?
All right, Ed, you dip inside, get everything together. Let me know when to come back to you. But Dave, I want to go back to Miami and check in with John Berman. But before we do, let's give you an opportunity to just get what it is here right now. You're not going to hear from me. It doesn't mean anything's happening, but just try and catch some of this sound and the sights of what is going on in Naples, Florida right now. Dave's going to give you the full pan of the situation and just take it in for what it is. This is what Naples has been dealing with for about an hour or so, and we have hours and hours to go. This is it. This is Mother Nature at her worst, and we're going to hope that we respond with human nature at its best. To John Berman down in Miami, we know you've been seeing it like this. We're getting some unique aspects here, John, because of this corridor effect we're getting where we are in Naples. How is it where you are?
I keep listening to your coverage, Chris, and as it gets worse there, I keep thinking it will get better here, but it just hasn't happened. Not yet. In fact, Miami continues to get hammered by powerful winds, gusts as strong as we've seen them. The rain may be let up for a second here, which is nice, and we did just learn that a second crane has collapsed now in downtown Miami at 30 East, if you're familiar with the geography here. So that's two cranes, one collapsed, a possible failure in the crane. The bottom line is this crane is now hanging. Part of it is hanging down. These cranes, more than 20 of them in downtown Miami, a sign of the progress and the economic sort of boom times that Miami is experiencing, but they couldn't get them down in time. It takes 6 days to a week to get a crane down. They didn't have that much lead time, so they had to leave them up. They secured them. We were told they were built to withstand 145-mile-an-hour winds. Now, I don't know whether we got that here. You know, down on the ground, 80, 90 miles an hour. We were told up in the skyscrapers there were gusts of 100 miles an hour, but it's clear at least two of those cranes have failed. Authorities are telling people not to go anywhere near the areas of those two cranes. And of course, it's not just the cranes that are a problem, also the storm surge, very much what we anticipate to see on the west coast of Florida. A very real problem at this moment in Miami. Some of the streets that people know so well, Brickell Ave, covered in water, and it's very hard to move around these areas, and they're exact areas that Miami officials ordered mandatory evacuations for. They wanted people out because they were scared of just this thing. We were told of 4 to 6 feet worth of storm surge here. Chad Myers at last check said 5.5 feet, and 5.5 feet was enough to get over some of those storm walls and flood the streets. Where we are right now, when we've been out here straight days nearly, the water came up. You can see the cement right here. It came up about a foot from the top. It has begun to recede because the tide is going out. So our immediate situation right around here appears to be better. The boats in this marina have taken a beating. It's behind the camera, you can't see it, but there was one of the larger boats at one point was tied down by 8 ropes. There was only one rope holding it on at a certain point. People rushing out and trying to secure it. I think maybe they did. We have seen parts of docks float off into the water here. And then another sensation that we saw for much of the morning was bursts of green light out there from Miami Beach. That is where Miami Beach is, and those bursts of green light were transformers blowing. And that, of course, meant that Miami Beach was going to be without power. They could be without power for some time. A lot of Miami-Dade has lost power as well. Again, just the beginning for what will happen in Florida as this storm has made the turn and heads right towards where Chris Cuomo is in Naples. And Chris, I've been listening to you. Hang in there. If it's anything like it's been in Miami, it's going to be a problem for many, many hours.
Yeah, and I mean that, the duration is going to be a big part of this story. I'm going to stand out of the shot right now, just so that Dave can give you Dave Rupp, our photojournalist, can give you the full effect of what we're getting hit with now, because it's certainly intensified. And the acute concern here on the West Coast is just the inability to absorb that much, because these cities and areas are so low-lying. And the extra component here, as Chad Myers has been explaining, will be storm surge. That hasn't even come into effect yet. Nothing here has been affected by what could be an additional 10 feet of water that could come in. It could come up many blocks. It could affect power. It could affect a lot of different things, and for a long time. And that's why evacuating was such a key concern. And it's important to note that they got lucky here. And I know that this looks like nothing close to luck, understood. But everything is relative in a hurricane. And the people here decided to evacuate days in advance. This is a little bit of a snowbird city, and the snowbirds, the people come down during the winter, so this is the off season. So there aren't as many people here, but of the 19,000 or so that the city manager said they were worried about, he believes as many as 2/3, according to the mayor, may have left in advance, and that's really important. Here's somebody coming down the road right now. It's not something you see too much, but I think they're one of us. I think those were media going down the road. You've seen almost nobody. That's a very good sign. You have not seen people out. You haven't seen awkward spectating or anything like that. We've been told that the police are keeping people away from the waterfronts. Now, that's really key. Chad Myers tells a really harrowing tale of what happened in Lake Okeechobee some years ago, where the water was gone. People went running out there just out of fascination and collecting fish and stuff like that were exposed, and then the water came back, and it was a deadly event. And God forbid, we don't want to see anything like that. And I know that they're trying to keep people away from the water's edge, because there's no question, you're seeing the pictures on the internet. It's really freaky to see where the ocean was, where a bay was, where a bayou was, all of a sudden be vacant. But in conditions like this, you just can't have it, John. I mean, this gusting, maybe it's a little different because we're a little elevated here. I'm probably, 25 feet or so off the ground. So maybe I'm just feeling it as more intense, but it is just twisting trees like twigs. Chad Myers, I'm never one to question your calculation, that's for sure, but I have to tell you, it's hitting us pretty hard, and it's making a difference. It's taking trees down with pretty much ease right now. I'm watching trees and parts of trees flying through the air. It's picking up, my friend. What can you tell us?
It is going to continue to pick up, and I know that doesn't sound reasonable, and you can ask John how long he's been standing in that brutal weather out there. I feel for you, John. You have a little while to go. I mean, honestly, it was an hour ago I said you're halftime. Now you're third quarter, but you're not fourth quarter. And for you, Chris Cuomo, you are now in the lightest part of the eyewall. The lightest part of the eyewall. You went through a small little outer eye here, and that's now moved to the north. Chris Cuomo right there, downtown Naples. But the major part of the eyewall here, you can see the difference in colors in the red. That is about to move over you. I would say that's 3 minutes away, and that is what's going to be hitting you as soon as we toss back to you, essentially. There's the eyewall. What I have noticed for everyone in Tampa is that the storm has slightly turned right. I don't know if it's a wobble or a trend, came out of the Keys, and now it has slightly turned to the right. If that continues, Tampa, you're going to be in much better shape tonight because the eye of the storm will be right over land for a longer time. The original forecast was for it to come something like this and stay half on land, half off land, and that would continue to be a strong storm all the way to Tampa. If we continue to see this, then we won't see as strong of a storm in Tampa tonight at about 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. But there is the eye of the storm right now. Chris Cuomo heading to you. I can see damage already on some of your pictures there. Trees are going to be down. It's going to get worse. I would say you're going to add at least another 30 miles per hour onto what you just saw when you get that part of the eye wall right there, and that's 5 minutes away. Chris?
And then we have to deal with the residual storm storm surge and see what that does. You know, we spoke to someone on Marco Island. You're saying that the storm went over there as a Category 3. Wayne, please check in with us. Wayne is a 61-year-old man, decided to stay in his condo. He said about a dozen people, maybe a little less, decided to stay along with him in their own units. Please check in and let us know that you're okay, because a lot of the people who decided to stay behind wind up being our eyes and ears, as the first responders will be when they get back out, but they're not there yet. So just let us know you're okay. So John, they're telling me that they're going to put up on the screen a radar comparison of where we are right now. I don't think either of us have returns. So maybe in the control room you can kind of talk us through what are you seeing in terms of similarities between Miami and Naples right now? Well, they're both being hit very hard is the information they're giving me, John, which I think we could have figured out. Go ahead.
Yeah, Chris. Exactly. Thank you, Control Room, for telling us we're both being hit hard by the hurricane right now. But that is actually, I think, an exceptional image. Because if you look at the map of Florida, where Chris is in Naples, right? It's all the way on the west coast. I'm in Miami. That's on the east coast. We have all of Florida in between us, and we are both getting hammered right now by Hurricane Irma. And Miami has been hit since last night. We were out here last night beginning to feel the impact of these winds. So it's been nearly 24 hours of consistent winds. Chad Myers promises me we're in the fourth quarter of this game. If it goes into overtime, I'm not talking to Chad anymore ever again. Chris, you have a lot more ahead of you. But again, you know, Chad's the meteorologist here. It feels to me like the size of this storm is highly unusual, and the fact that it's delivering the force on both sides of the state is something we haven't seen before, and it's a contributing factor, frankly, to what you're about to see there with the storm surge as well, Chris.
All right, so John, let's try and bring in somebody else on this west coast here and get a different sense of perspective of a place that's just starting to get into this. So you got John Berman in Miami and all our correspondents there, obviously, from downtown Miami over onto the east coast. They've been dealing with this in excess of 12 hours now, really, if you think about it. And that is, again, as John was just telling you, testament to the size, the breadth of Hurricane Irma. Not just strong, but very long, so that the range of hurricane force winds goes about 75 miles outside the eye. Tropical force winds about 100, 125 miles outside the eye, so the range is enormous, hence why Miami and Naples are getting battered equally. But what about who comes next? Drew Griffin is just a little ways up north from us here on this west coast. You've been dealing with the shelter system. This is that heavier band that Chad was telling us about. It definitely is picking up. It is a wall of water coming sideways. It is like standing in a car wash. And I know that because I've actually done that before, Drew. So what is it like where you are right now? We lost power here. Is your shelter back up and running? Did they get power up?
No, the power is not up. We're still out, and we're still getting those heavy bands, which are just going to increase, like they've been for Berman, like they've been for you, and we're getting it up here. And if you look, if you're at a dry place and look at a map of Florida and see where all of us are, just the incredible strength of this storm and the breadth of this storm is wild. We're blocked by a large hotel, so we're in the block zone, but these trees are just on the other side, and you can see the trees, the street signs, and when we pan over, you'll see these tall light posts. Those are light posts where they've dropped the lights all the way down to the ground here in Florida to protect them from the wind. But that light is just wobbling now in the wind. I'm sure it can take that kind of wind it's designed to, but it gives you a sense of the strength of the wind that is coming through here. I know it's bad there. I know it's bad in Miami. It is also bad here, and it's bad, I think, remarkably, Chris, all at the same time. Irma is just churning through all of southeast and southwest Florida as it makes its way up now towards Tampa. Chris?
All right, Drew, I'm going to stick with you for a second, but we just got word that the president, I believe, control room, correct me if I'm getting it wrong, my IFB isn't perfect, what I'm hearing isn't perfect, that President Trump has been talking about the storm. That media is coming in. When we get it, we will bring it to you. Obviously, he is monitoring the best situation, but as you can see, this has just turned into a maelstrom here in Naples. I mean, this water is coming down sideways. The wind gusts have gotten really intense here, Drew, and it's not just the intensity, it's the duration. It doesn't end. As Chad was telling John Berman, hopefully they're in the fourth quarter, but these quarters are hours long, and it's got to be raising the level of anxiety of the people up in that shelter. What are you seeing in terms of how they're coming together and how they're processing what's about to come their way?
Well, everybody's just trying to stick together, trying to share food. We've seen a lot of people here. They're all in the same boat, right? Nothing brings people together like terrible tragedy. So they're all trying to work with each other. We are currently at a hotel which is just filled with evacuees, and the power is out, has been out. People are congregating in the lobby. Power to cell phones is starting to run dry on some of these folks, so they're losing all their communication. And what you see a lot more of is the social interaction where people are trying to share news with each other. Hey, did you listen to a radio? Did you hear anything? Did you get a call out? What did they say? So you're in that phase when people are they're starting to realize they are going to survive this storm together and alone until it's over with. It's basically with a hunker down philosophy, right? But it's still this incredible wind. Not many people venturing out, that is for sure.
That's for damn sure, Drew. People would have to be really just off it to want to go outside right now. Honestly, I don't know how they physically could do it, even if they wanted to for some nuts reason. Here where we're standing right now on this balcony, it's like a little micro analogy of what this entire area is going to deal with. We're flooding on our balcony right now just because of debris. You don't have to show it to them, Dave, but just little twigs and stuff that are coming down from the trees are blocking the drains. So the water fills up so quickly. Imagine that magnified exponentially for the sewer system here, which already is a very low water table, right? I mean, it's very shallow because the water table is very high, so it floods very easily. Just this rain alone would have completely overwhelmed it. And still, we're waiting on the storm surge. And these gusts are the real deal. Ed Lavandera is at ground level. We're up about 25 feet. And Ed, I got to tell you, it is like a sandblasting to the face. What is it like down where you are? And really, it's not about the levity, it's about the concern for the longevity. How long can Naples take this kind of pounding? And then when that storm surge comes in, then what? What are you seeing?
Chris, this is unbelievable. If we can make our way this way across the shot here, kind of give you a look. Oh, man. The visibility is completely cut off. That building structure that we just were able to show you here a little while ago is no more than 100 yards away from us, and I can barely see it anymore. The water's pulling up here on the street. The lack of visibility that has just disappeared on us here in the last few minutes is absolutely stunning. The fact that we can't even see a building anymore that was just no more than 100 yards away from us now has just been really stunning. Obviously, now lightening up a smidge. Jerry, I don't know if I can get you to come back around this way. This is a Cambier Park, which is the area just back to where we are. I'm going to get out of the way here. Chris, if you can still hear me, needed to jump out of that. It's just
I hear you, Ed.
crazy.
Keep going.
But looking back toward that building, you can see it's basically a outdoor concert venue with that soft tarp on it, and that is at Cambier Park here in downtown Naples. And that roof, that structure there continues to hold. I thought for sure that tarp would come flying off and ripping to shreds here as these winds have intensified, and now you can kind of see that structure again a little bit. But as we were starting to talk, I couldn't even see it. Just absolutely stunning, the amount of rain and the way it was whipping through here. And then if you look down here on the ground, you can see just how much the water is starting to pool up on the ground. Definitely, covering my feet here. That's that storm surge concern. We feel like we're in a really good spot as far as storm surge and the water rising in the area. We're halfway between the Gulf side and the river that cuts along the eastern side of town. But it is that storm surge that's going to continue to push its way north and cause a lot of flooding, that 10 to 15 foot storm surge that was expected in this. But it is the back half of that storm as it brings the water in from the Gulf side and pushes it back here toward the east that is going to be of major concern. But you can just see how little visibility we have here at this point, and the dramatic nature here is this the eye of this storm, Hurricane Irma, which just made landfall in Marco Island. This is about 20 miles south of where we are, and the eye of that storm coming directly to where we are right now. And it is that closer, that edge, being close to the eye of that storm, which brings you the most intense part of these hurricanes, and that's what we are approaching here right now, Chris.
All right, Ed, now back up to where we are. There's no question it's going to be a little bit more intense because of the elevation, but this is it now. I mean, these are hurricane force winds. There's no question about it. This just came over. We know that the hurricane made landfall not far south from here not long ago. Chad Myers said that we were going to get an intensification, and he was exactly right. I mean, we're seeing it now. The visibility is almost gone. I don't even know what I'm hearing right now, but we're having some kind of weird sound coming from around the corner, but not unusual. Things start to break free, and you start to hear the wind flying through pieces of metal and stuff. But the visibility has been cut down to maybe 200 feet, maybe. And these gusts have to be well in excess of a general hurricane force gust. You're seeing the structures. They're not going to be able to take it. You can just see these trees are starting to split. And you're seeing that over time, this is going to create problems that they're going to have to deal with for a long time here. I mean, just look at this. This is water that's coming sideways here. Chad Myers, I know you're listening along with me. On the balcony where we're standing, as a little microcosm of what we're dealing with here, there's just the little leaves and stuff from the flooding, from the rain, from the air, from the wind, has clogged up, so it's flooding the whole balcony, and that's what's happening to the roads. That's what's happening to the sewer system. And when that storm surge comes on top of it, what can they expect here in Naples, especially if they have hours of this to go?
They truly do have hours to go.